Hi, I'm Holly Black, author in this particular case of The Stolen Heir. So I've been writing in Faerie for a long time. My very first book, Tithe, was set in Faerie. But the thing that's different about Elfhame is, for the first time, I was going to write from a perspective that knew how Faerie actually worked, rather than the perspective of someone who gets pulled into Faerie. And so I wanted to come up with a place that Elfhame could be that was outside of the mortal world, far enough that it really could be hidden from it. And the people there, the Isles, the people on the Isles would not actually be able to, or they can interact, but they can't directly interact. So that's where it came out of. And then I had to try and figure out an island. And then at first I thought, I'm going to come up with an uninhabited island that exists. And then I thought, no, I'm just going to have an isle that is shrouded in mist. My favorite character to write is probably Matic. I love giving bad old guy advice. It turns out like I can really channel bad dad really, really well. He's just so much fun to write. But my favorite characters are always the protagonists. That's why they get their books, right? That's because, they're the people that I am most interested in. So it is different. And I think in part what makes writing a character fun is that you are able to do stuff with them that is purely fun, whereas with certain characters you're trying to get at the truth of them in a way that is, challenging. My mind wants to say Stolen Heir. It wants to, I absolutely much harder. But when I actually think about it, I think there was a period when I was writing Wicked King near the end. It was summer, and I think I stopped sleeping for a while, and my friends were starting to worry about me because I would show up again and again to our writing dates like more and more sleep deprived. So that wasn't good. That was not good. So I think probably they were all equally miserable, but I forget after. I'm a very unhappy writer. I love revising. I hate drafting. See, I don't know, editing is like cleaning your bathroom. You're not gonna make it worse. Whereas drafting is like taking the beautiful, pristine idea you have in your head and turning it to crap. I actually love middle books. So I don't know why I cut one out. But what I wanted to do with this duology was structurally different, in the sense that, the first book was going to be Ren's book, and then the second book was going to be Oak's book. And what I was interested in about that is that in a book where there's a lot of secrets, you're going to, in Oak's book, learn a lot of things that will shed a new light on what was happening in the first book. So that was why I wanted to write it in the duology format.
Do you like writing the middle book, or do you like reading a middle book, or both? Both. I think, because, first books are setup, third books are payout, second books are just pure character torture end to end. It's great. So by the end of this duology, I think you will be able to tell what I will do next. It will be obvious. We're going to find out, aren't we? So I think fantasy gives us an opportunity to talk about the real world, but talk about it slant. Like when you consider the werewolf, right? We all know what it's like to be angry. So angry that we might say something or do something that would hurt someone that we care about. And we have certain prescribed ideas of how to talk about that anger. But with the werewolf, the way we talk about it is different. For one thing, you don't blame someone for being a werewolf. You have to accept what they are and then figure out how to deal with it from there. And that allows for different kinds of stories and different kinds of approaches and different ways we can see ourselves in that creature without necessarily having the same judgment. And so I think, fantasy is always metaphor, but it's always also magic. Like, it cannot just be metaphor. Like, a story about a werewolf cannot just be a story about anger. It also has to be a story about a werewolf. And so that is the thing that I really love about it, because while it gets at things sideways, while it gets at things slant, it also cannot be a one-to-one metaphor. I'm very interested in people making mistakes. I'm interested in letting, I guess, characters make mistakes. And so I'm not sure it is conscious in the sense that I don't think that's what I set out to do, but I think I set out to write the kinds of people I believe in and the kinds of people I like to read about. So probably the book that I owe much of my career to is, it's an illustrated book, largely. It's Brian Froud and Alan Lee's Faeries. And so if you're not familiar with it, Brian Froud did concept art for Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. Alan Lee did concept art for Lord of the Rings. So imagine them in the 70s in a tiny English town, like making this book that is both majestic and terrifying. And if you haven't seen it, please go find it and take a look, because it's just incredible. And it has, in addition to this beautiful art, a lot of these folk stories. And so that was always what I thought about fairies. That's always what I believed them to be, and set me on the path to write about them the way I do. God, that's such a good question. Maybe Owen Kushner's Swords Point. This is one of my favorite books. Maybe Goblin Emperor. I think I write for my reader self. I always tell people to try to write for their reader selves and not their writer selves, because I think as a young writer I had very prescribed ideas of what good writing was, and I think more and more what I believe is that I have to think about, what do I really like to read? What are the things that I want in a book, and to write toward that, because I think I am the only reader I really know. Yes, I do. I have a favorite joke. Okay. It's not great, but I love it. Okay. What's this?
I don't know.
A dead this. I know. It's really dumb, right? I love it so much. I really, really love reality television. Like, I watch so much terrible reality television. I'm very conversant in it. I mean, I don't even write, not even the great one. I watched The Housewives. I watch all of, so many Bravo shows. I watched The Traitors. I mean, I watch it all. I love non-narrative. I think I find it soothing because I'm not following a story. And so if I've been writing all day, I think the fact that I'm not going to be following narrative really pleases me. That is my highbrow answer for an extremely lowbrow